So it happens quite often on these old guitars that you find somewhere in your basement after some years, that they are almost unplayable. And what happens normally is that this string height, I don't know how clearly you can see, but this string height becomes too high. So this height becomes too big, and then it's really hard to press on your guitar and to play it like normally. Also, what happens is when the guitar was played quite a lot, your frets tend to get a bit worn out. So today I'm going to show you a simple trick how you can make a small repair at home. However, I would not advise this for you to do it on an expensive guitar. So do it, I think the professional quality luthier would probably take about $150 for the repair, but it will be quite more professional than the one we're going to do today. This is just a quick fix when you're like stuck at home and you have a cheap guitar that you want to get into a playable condition. I am quite bad at drawing, but this is a small guitar I made, and the strings go from nut to saddle like here. They tend to travel and down. So what happens here, it's actually why the string height goes up. This means this distance, why it goes up. There are three main causes on the old guitars. One cause, which happens a lot on not very well built guitars, is that guitars inside, they tend to have some bracing. So, and these braces are making the wood, the upper plate, harder. If this bracing is not made in a proper way, what happens is that this wood swallows a bit because of the string traction pulling the bridge up. So what happens is that the bridge becomes higher and all the strings tend to get a bit higher. The second problem which happens and also cannot be addressed very much is that the whole neck tends to be pulled a bit away. This means from this point all up it tends to get pulled away. So what happens is that these strings somehow become much more further away from the neck. And this kind of condition requires an action called a neck reset, which means you have to pull the neck down, and then you have to actually cut a piece of the neck right here, and then you put it back up. So the third thing that happens, and which is actually repairable, is bowing in the neck. So many guitars tend to get a bit bowed in the neck, like this. So this is what usually truss rod solves a problem. Truss rod is a double stick inside the guitar that you apply pressure to it to one side, and then it somehow straightens the neck. Or if you put it too much, it can make a back bow. But many classical guitars don't have this truss rod, so then the normal procedure which can be is that a heat is applied and the guitar is repaired through the pressure when the neck is heated. So what I normally advise you to do is, if you have some kind of a table, you take a clamp and you put one clamp here, like this, and then you put another clamp here, and then you put something below, like some books or something. So all this pressure is applied from this side, and these books keep the pressure up. And then you take a heating element and apply heat on the upper side. However, we are now in the current crisis, current conditions. I cannot get these clamps, so I somehow managed to get a bit different strategy, which is not optimal. If you have clamps, definitely will go for it. But today I will be doing by using an iron like this and two books. Okay, so I undid the strings on both sides, and I was too lazy to put it completely off because I'm not changing the strings right now, but if you have time you can also change the strings because now it's a good opportunity. I just took a small piece of tape and taped the strings at the back so we don't have any of the strings exposed to the iron. Now I will take the iron and put it on. I have put something between wool and cotton. This is like probably definitely not the highest heat, but not the lowest also, something between middle to high. So the iron is quite hot. Now I'm gonna leave the iron on. Maybe I will put it up and forth a few times. I will leave this iron on for about 5 minutes so the wood gets quite warm. Okay, now it's been a couple of minutes, and what you can start to see is that these threads tend to get some a bit wet and greasy. Cannot decide at all what this is, but there are two possible explanations what's happening on. One is that all the grease which was stuck from years of playing and from fingers is now becoming loose and melting. The other possible explanation is that water is actually vaporizing out of the neck. So I'm not sure about what's going on here, but I will be careful, because if the water gets out of the neck and we apply pressure from the strings when the neck is too dry, it might bend even worse. So for this I will advise, before you tension the strings back on, that you wait at least 12 hours so the water comes back into the neck. Now leave it for a few more minutes and then we are gonna apply pressure to the opposite side. Okay, so the neck has warmed up by now, and this is the setup I have. It's two books lying on the floor, very simple. What I do now is that I turn the guitar over so it faces the two books, one side with this underneath, the other side just to get it to the nut, and then I apply pressure to the neck. You can feel the neck is much softer because it's quite heated up. So I started by applying small pressure, and I will continue doing this for like 3 or 4 minutes. If you are really light, you can put quite a lot of your weight, so the neck will get also a bit bow into the opposite direction, just a bit. This is the second time I'm doing this in a row, because the first time I didn't manage to get it up all the way I wanted. So be prepared. You will have to do this a few times, maybe 3 or 4 times. It also tends to get a bit like it used to be through the time, so the bow comes back after some time, and you have to maybe do it again in a few months and then again in a few months. But after a few times it will be more and more, you will get more and more successful with the results, and the bow will go more and more away. So now I will continue standing for a few more minutes. Okay, so a few minutes of standing have passed, and I can already see some of the improvement, especially when I look across the line. I don't know how much you will be able to see it, but I can already see some improvement, that the neck is now quite straight. However, the fretboard is still quite warm right now, so now I'm gonna leave it to cool it down, and I will finish the job by doing the fret leveling tomorrow. I think it's very important that you don't put the string tension back on when the neck is still warm, and possibly wait if some water has gone out of the neck when you were doing the iron, so the water comes back. I'm not sure about this water, if it's real or not, but I will definitely wait until tomorrow to be on the safe side. So in the part 2 I will be doing the fret leveling and polishing, so the frets will be at the same level, and the surface of the fret will be quite pointy, so this will help significantly when playing. At the end, I would like to advise you again, do it only if you have a cheap classical guitar. So I said the luthier would probably take about $150 for this kind of job, maybe $200. So do it only if you have a cheap guitar that is probably worth below $200. Then it's maybe economical to do it yourself by this way. Also, before you do it, check that your guitar really does not have a truss rod. So truss rod is normal, you can see it like a screw here. Sometimes it is under some cap or plastic cap or ornament or something. On some classical guitars the screw is here, but really rarely, and normally the screw is inside here. But still, this truss rod is not very common on classical guitars. It's much more common on acoustic or electrical. But the classical guitars also, in the last 5 years, they tend to get more and more truss rod built in. Also the cheaper models. So before you do anything to it, look for it if it has truss rod. If it has truss rod, then just search on the Google how to adjust your neck bow with truss rod, and you will see that all you have to do is to screw a bit into one or the other direction. With this procedure I have done here, I have bowed the neck slightly back, but it's similar doing probably 1/8 to maybe 1/4 of a turn on a truss rod. Each of this session helps a bit like this. So if your bow is really bad, you will have to do it a few times in a row, and also perhaps doing another session after some time when it settles back and some of the bow comes back. If you have an expensive guitar, do it at your own risk. However, I would advise you to go to the luthier, or maybe do it only if you have done successfully a few of the cheaper guitars before and you really know what you're doing. So until the part 2, good luck.